Captain Park stood on the bridge of the Earth vessel and watched the stars through the main window. Her ship floated in formation with 11 others, all waiting for the signal to begin. Around them, the massive space station of Prime hung like a silver moon against the darkness. She had never seen so many alien ships in one place. Hundreds of vessels from 84 different species had gathered here for the Galactic Assembly meeting. Some were as small as shuttles. Others were bigger than mountains. All of them carried delegates who had come to watch humanity perform. 15 years ago, humans had discovered they were not alone in the universe. 15 years ago, the first alien ship had appeared above Earth and changed everything. Now humanity was the member of the Galactic Assembly, and today was their chance to prove they belonged. Lieutenant walked up beside her. He was young, barely 30 years old, but he had earned his place on this mission. His eyes were bright with excitement. "The assembly is ready for us, Captain," he said. "All ships report prepared for the demonstration." Nodded slowly. She did not share his excitement. She felt the weight of every eye watching them, every alien mind judging them. Humans were still newcomers here. To most of the galaxy, they were primitive creatures who had barely learned to travel between stars. "Begin the formation sequence," she ordered. The 12 human ships moved as one. They spread out in a perfect circle, then collapsed inward, then spiraled outward again. It was a simple dance, but every movement was precise. Every ship knew exactly where to be. In the observation gallery of Prime Station, Ambassador watched the display with nervous hands clasped together. She wore the formal blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps, and she had worked for 10 years to reach this moment. If the demonstration went well, humanity might finally earn some respect. If it went poorly, they might be dismissed as irrelevant for another generation. Beside her, alien delegates watched with expressions she could not read. Some had faces like insects. Some had no faces at all. One being near the front was nothing but a cloud of glowing gas contained in a transparent suit. They represented civilizations that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. To them, humans were like children playing with toys. "Impressive formation control," said a tall being with silver skin. His name was, and he was a junior member of the Assembly Council. "Your species learns quickly." "Thank you," replied. She tried to smile. "We have worked hard to reach this level." "Hard work is admirable," said. "But the galaxy is old, Ambassador. Many species have worked hard. Few have survived." Out in space, Captain gave the next order. "Deploy target drones. Begin weapons demonstration." 50 automated drones launched from a cargo ship and scattered across the practice area. They were fast and unpredictable, designed to test the human gunners. The alien delegates leaned forward slightly. Now things were becoming interesting. The human ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy crossed the darkness. Drones exploded one after another in flashes of orange light. The gunners worked with calm efficiency, tracking targets and eliminating them without wasted shots. Lieutenant watched the destruction with pride. 47 drones down, 3 remaining. The last 3 drones were fast. They dodged and weaved, trying to escape the human weapons. But the gunners tracked them patiently. 3 more flashes, 3 more kills. "All targets destroyed," reported. "Demonstration complete." Allowed herself a small nod of satisfaction. They had performed well. Nothing spectacular, but solid and professional. Perhaps it would be enough to earn a little respect. Then the alarms began to scream. Every screen on the bridge turned red. Warning lights flashed across all 12 human ships. His fingers flew across his console, trying to understand what was happening. "Captain, we have multiple hyperspace signatures." His voice cracked with sudden fear. "Large signatures, very large." The sky tore open. Ships poured out of hyperspace like water through a broken dam. They were dark vessels, covered in spikes and weapons, ugly and brutal in design. They came in waves, more and more, until the darkness was filled with them. counted quickly. 100 ships, 200, 300. Her stomach turned cold. "Identify those vessels," she ordered. "Dominion," whispered. The name alone was enough to explain everything. There were raiders, pirates, slavers. They attacked from the shadows and disappeared before anyone could respond. They had terrorized the outer regions of the galaxy for centuries. No one had ever stopped them. No one had ever tried. And now 300 of their warships hung in the sky above Prime, where 200,000 assembly delegates waited with almost no defenses. On the station, panic erupted. Delegates screamed and ran in every direction. Ambassador stood frozen, watching the impossible scene through the observation window. The alien ships around Prime scattered like frightened animals, desperate to escape. The commander's face appeared on every screen. He was a massive creature with dark scales and eyes like burning coals. His name was, and he smiled with a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Attention, Galactic Assembly," he said. His voice was deep and cruel. "Your gathering has been noticed. Your wealth has been assessed. Your defenses have been found wanting. Surrender your station and some of you may live. Resist and all of you will die." Captain stared at the screen. Her heart pounded in her chest. She looked at her 12 small ships, then at the 300 enemy vessels. The math was simple. The math was impossible. Turned to her. "Captain, what do? We cannot fight that fleet. We should retreat and call for help." Did not answer. She looked at Prime Station, filled with 200,000 innocent beings. She looked at the ships moving closer, weapons charging. She thought about what would happen to those delegates if no one stood in the way. The Assembly's defense fleet was far away. Reinforcements would take hours to arrive. Hours that those people did not have. She made her decision. "All ships," said, her voice steady and calm. "This is Captain Park. Form defensive line between the enemy fleet and Prime Station. We will hold this position until reinforcements arrive." His face went pale. "Captain, that is suicide. We cannot hold against 300 ships." "No," agreed. "We probably cannot, but we are going to try." She looked at her crew, at the young faces staring back at her. "Those are innocent people on that station. Someone has to protect them. Today, that someone is us." The 12 human ships moved into position. They formed a thin line between the armada and the station, like a handful of stones trying to hold back an ocean. On the flagship, Commander watched the human vessels with amusement. Such small ships, such foolish bravery. "What are they doing?" asked one of his officers. "They are trying to be heroes," replied with a laugh. "Destroy them first, then we take the station." The battle was about to begin. The first missiles crossed the darkness at terrible speed. Captain Park watched them come on her tactical screen, hundreds of bright dots racing toward her thin line of ships. "All vessels, evasive pattern 7, she commanded. "Return fire at will." The human ships scattered and reformed like a flock of birds. Missiles streaked past them, missing by meters. The gunners answered with everything they had. Energy beams and torpedoes flew back at the fleet. On the bridge of the Earth vessel Morning Star, Chief Tactical Officer worked his console with desperate speed. Numbers flashed across his screens. Enemy positions, weapon ranges, probability calculations. "We are hitting them," he reported through the fleet communication channel. "But they have too many ships. For every one we damage, 10 more take its place." Knew this. She had known it from the moment she gave the order to stand and fight. But knowing something and accepting it were different things. "Keep firing," she said. "Every second we hold them is another second for evacuation." Behind her line of ships, Prime Station was in chaos. Emergency shuttles launched from every dock, carrying delegates away as fast as possible. But the station held over 200,000 beings. The evacuation would take hours. They did not have hours. Pilot Officer IM led the human fighter squadron through the enemy formation. Her small craft dodged between the massive warships like an insect flying through a forest. Behind her, 11 other fighters followed in perfect formation. "Squadron, target their command antennas," she ordered. "If we can disrupt their coordination, we give our capital ships a better chance." The fighters attacked. They were too small and too fast for the big guns to track. They darted in, fired their weapons at critical systems, and darted away before the enemy could respond. But the had fighters too, hundreds of them, saw them coming on her sensors, a wall of enemy craft rising to meet her squadron. "Break formation," she shouted. "Individual combat, take as many as you can." The sky became a storm of spinning ships and flashing weapons. Human fighters twisted and turned, fighting against impossible numbers. They were outnumbered 20-1, but they did not retreat. They could not retreat. Every enemy fighter they destroyed was one less threat to the main fleet. On the flagship, Commander watched the battle with growing annoyance. The human ships were still fighting. They should have been destroyed in the first 5 minutes. Instead, they dodged and weaved and refused to die. "These creatures are persistent," he growled. "Increase pressure. I want them eliminated." More ships moved forward. The weight of fire against the human line increased. One by one, the Earth vessels began to take damage. The ship called Iron Will lost its engines first. It drifted helpless, but its guns kept firing. The vessel Rising Sun took a direct hit to its ammunition storage and exploded in a ball of fire. 200 crew members died in an instant. Captain felt each loss like a knife in her heart. These were her people, her responsibility, and she was leading them to their deaths. But she did not give the order to retreat. "To all ships," she broadcast, "I know what I am asking of you. I know the price we will pay, but look behind us. Look at that station. Look at the shuttles still trying to escape. Those people are counting on us. We are all they have." Lieutenant stood at her side, his face pale but determined. "Time since battle started, 18 minutes. Enemy ships destroyed, 47. Our ships remaining, 9. The math was still impossible, but it was getting better. In her fighter had destroyed 7 enemy craft. Her squadron was down to 4 pilots. She had taken damage to her left wing, and her weapons were overheating, but she kept fighting. A fighter appeared behind her. She could not shake it. Its weapons locked onto her craft. "This is Pilot IM," she broadcast calmly. "I cannot escape this one. It has been an honor." She did not try to run. Instead, she turned her fighter around and flew directly at the enemy. The pilot hesitated, confused by this strange tactic. In that moment of hesitation, fired everything she had. Both ships exploded together. They closed her eyes for a brief moment. Another name to remember, another family to notify, another hero gone. "Captain," said urgently, "the enemy is concentrating fire on the vessel Brave Heart. She cannot survive much longer." Looked at her tactical display. The Brave Heart was positioned at the center of their line. If she fell, the formation would collapse. They would pour through the gap and reach the station. "Move to support position," she ordered. "We shield Brave Heart with our own hull if necessary." They raced across the battlefield. Weapons tracked them, scoring hits along their side. The ship shook with each impact. Systems failed. Crew members were thrown from their stations. But they reached the Brave Heart. They placed themselves between the wounded vessel and the enemy guns. They took the punishment meant for their sister ship. "Brave Heart reports engines restored," shouted over the noise of explosions. "She can fight again." "Then tell her to fight," replied. "We all fight until we cannot fight anymore." 33 minutes into the battle. Human ships remaining, 5. Ships destroyed, 112. The enemy was feeling pain now, stared at his status reports with disbelief. How were these primitive creatures doing this? How were 12 small ships causing so much damage to his mighty fleet? "Commander," one of his officers said nervously, Our losses are significant, perhaps we should. We should nothing, snarled. They are almost finished, push harder, end this. The surged forward. The 5 remaining human ships stood their ground. Chief had transferred to the after his own ship was destroyed. He worked alongside crew, his uniform burned and his face bleeding. All weapons are overheating, he reported. We have maybe 10 more minutes of full combat capability. Then make those 10 minutes count, said. On Prime, Ambassador watched the battle through the observation window. Tears streamed down her face. She had known some of those crew members. She had eaten dinner with Captain just 2 days ago. Now she was watching them die. Beside her stood in shocked silence. In his 1,000 years of life, he had never seen anything like this. These humans knew they would die. They knew from the very beginning, and they fought anyway. Why, he whispered, why do they not run? They could escape, they could save themselves. Because they are human, said softly. Because running away means letting others die, and humans cannot do that. We cannot turn our backs on people who need us. 47 minutes into the battle. Human ships remaining, 1. Ships destroyed, 186. There was burning, half her crew was dead. Most of her weapons were silent, but she was still flying, still fighting, still standing between the enemy and the station. Captain sat in her command chair. Blood ran down her face from a wound on her forehead. Her right arm was broken, but her voice was steady when she spoke. All crew members who can still walk abandon ship. Take the escape pods, get to the station. Captain protested, I will not leave you. That is an order, Lieutenant. Someone has to survive to tell the story. She managed a small smile. Besides, I need to fly this ship a little longer, and I fly better alone. The escape pods launched. Watch through the tiny window as the turn toward the fleet one final time. Opened a channel to all frequencies. Her words would be recorded. Her words would be remembered. This is Captain Park of the Earth vessel. To the commander, you will not reach that station. Not today, not ever. She pushed her engines to maximum. Not one of you reaches the station. The flew straight into the heart of the enemy formation. And then the assembly reinforcements arrived. Hundreds of ships dropped out of hyperspace, weapons already firing. The fleet, already battered and bleeding, broke apart. They ran. They fled into the darkness. When the battle ended, only the burning wreck of the remained where 12 human ships had stood. But the station was safe. 200,000 lives had been saved. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The medical station orbited Prime like a small moon. Inside its white walls, doctors from 50 different species worked without rest. They had been working for 3 days now. There were too many wounded, too many dying. Captain Park lay in a bed near the center of the critical care ward. Her body was wrapped in healing bandages. Machines beeped softly around her, monitoring her heart, her breathing, her brain. The doctors said she should not be alive. The doctors said her survival was impossible. But she was still breathing, still fighting. Even unconscious, she refused to give up. Lieutenant sat beside her bed. He had not slept since the battle. He had not eaten. He just sat there, watching her chest rise and fall, praying to whatever powers might exist that she would open her eyes. You saved us, he whispered to her. You saved everyone. Please do not leave us now. In another part of the station, Ambassador faced a room full of recording devices. Journalists from across the galaxy had come to hear humanity's response to the battle. They wanted answers. They wanted explanations. Looked at the cameras with tired eyes. She had prepared a speech, but now the words seemed hollow. 3 days ago, she began, 12 Earthships faced 300 warships. Our crews knew they could not win. They knew most of them would die. They fought anyway. Her voice cracked slightly. They fought because innocent people needed protection. They fought because that is what humans do. The questions came fast and sharp. Ambassador, How do you explain the tactics your ships employed? Pilots deliberately crashed their fighters into enemy vessels. Crews refused to evacuate so they could keep firing weapons. This behavior is considered insane by most civilized species. Took a deep breath. You call it insane, we call it sacrifice. When someone you care about is in danger, you do not calculate the odds. You do not worry about your own survival. You act. You protect. You give everything you have. But why? What makes humans willing to die for strangers? Because they were not strangers, replied. Not to us. Everyone on that station was a person, a life, a story that deserved to continue. My people could not stand by and watch those stories end, so they wrote their own ending instead. The recordings of the battle spread across the galaxy within hours. Every inhabited world saw the footage. Every species watched the impossible stand of the 12 human ships. They saw the rising sun explode, her guns still firing until the very last second. They saw Pilot Im turn her damaged fighter around and charge directly at her enemy. They saw wounded crew members crawl to their stations and keep working with broken bones and burned skin. They saw Captain's final broadcast. They heard her words, "Not one of you reaches the station." And they saw her fly the burning into the enemy formation, drawing fire away from the escape pods, giving her crew a chance to survive. Reactions across the galaxy were mixed. Some species watched with admiration. The warrior cultures of the Outer Rim raised their glasses to humanity. The defenders of the galaxy had found kindred spirits. But most species watch with something else, something colder. Fear sat in her chambers on her, watching the recordings for the 100th time. She was ancient by the standards of her species, over 1,200 years old. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed 100 wars and countless tragedies. She had never seen anything like this. "Pause," she commanded. The image froze on Captain's face, captured in the moment before her final charge. There was no fear in those eyes, no hesitation, only determination. "This is what concerns me," said to her assistant. "Look at her expression. She knows she is about to die. She knows there is no escape, and she is not afraid." "Perhaps she was in shock," the assistant suggested. "The human mind can react strangely under extreme stress." "No," shook her head slowly. "I have studied the recordings carefully. I have consulted with psychologists from 12 different species. They all agree. Captain was fully aware of her situation. She chose death willingly, eagerly even." The old leaned back in her chair. "Do you understand what that means?" "I am not certain." "It means humans are not like us. It means they value some things more than their own survival, and that makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy." On the medical station, Lieutenant received a visitor. A tall alien with silver skin entered the room and stood at a respectful distance from his bed. "You are," the alien said, "second officer of the—" "I am," did not stand. He did not take his eyes off. "What do you want?" "I am of the Assembly Council. I was on Prime during the attack. I watched your fleet from the observation gallery." He paused. "I watched you die for us." 847 of us survived," said. "Out of 4,200 crew members, not all of us died." "But you expected to. You all expected to." Moved closer. "I must ask you something, Lieutenant. Something I do not understand. When Captain gave the order to stand and fight, did anyone refuse? Did anyone try to run?" Finally looked at the alien. "No, no one refused, no one ran." "Why not? You knew you could not win. Logic demanded retreat." "Logic?" almost laughed. "You think we fought because of logic? We fought because we had to. Because there were people behind us who could not defend themselves. Because running away would have meant living with the knowledge that we let innocents die when we could have helped." He shook his head. "No human could live with that. Death is easier." Was silent for a long moment. "Your species is very young," he finally said. "Only 15 years among the stars. We assumed you were primitive, simple, harmless. And now I am not certain what you are, but I know you are not harmless. The alien turned to leave. The assembly will convene soon. There will be discussions about humanity's role in the galaxy. I thought you should know. After he left, turned back to his bed, her hand moved slightly, her eyes fluttered. Captain leaned forward, heart racing. Captain, can you hear me? His eyes opened slowly. They were unfocused at first, drifting across the ceiling. Then they found his face. Lieutenant, her voice was barely a whisper. Status report. Tears rolled down his cheeks. The station is safe, Captain. The retreated. We won. Casualties. Hesitated. Heavy, Captain, very heavy. Closed her eyes. A single tear escaped down her cheek. Read me the names when you have time. I want to know all their names. Yes, Captain, I will. She reached out with her uninjured hand and gripped his wrist. We did the right thing. Whatever comes next, remember that. We did the right thing. Across the galaxy, the assembly prepared to convene. Representatives from 84 species would gather to discuss what they had witnessed, to discuss what humanity had revealed about itself. And in her chambers prepared her speech. She had made her decision. She knew what had to be done. We have made a terrible mistake, she wrote. We assumed humans were primitive. Now we understand. They are not primitive. They are something far more dangerous. They are a species that will die for strangers, a species that values others more than themselves, a species without limits. She paused, considering her next words carefully. Such a species cannot be allowed to fight, not because they are weak, but because they are too strong. If humans go to war, they will never stop. They will give everything. They will sacrifice everything, and the galaxy will burn in their wake. The emergency session of the assembly would begin in 3 days. The fate of humanity among the stars would be decided, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Grand Assembly Chamber was the largest structure ever built by intelligent beings. It floated in neutral space, a massive sphere that could hold representatives from 1,000 species. Today, only 84 delegations sat in the curved rows of seats, but the tension in the room made it feel crowded. Ambassador walked to the human delegation's position. Her footsteps echoed in the vast space. Every alien eye followed her movement. Some looked at her with curiosity, some with admiration, most with fear. She took her seat beside Admiral No, Earth's military liaison. He was an old soldier, gray-haired and stern-faced. He had spent 40 years building humanity's small fleet. Now he sat in silence, waiting to hear what the galaxy would decide about everything he had created. The assembly will come to order, announced the speaker, a being of pure light that pulsed with each word. We are gathered to discuss the events at Prime and to determine appropriate responses. We'll present the first proposal. The ancient rose from her seat. She moved slowly to the central platform, her robes trailing behind her. Despite her age, her voice was strong and clear. Fellow representatives, she began, 6 days ago, we witnessed something unprecedented. 12 human warships faced 300 raiders. By every calculation, by every military principle known to our civilizations, those human ships should have been destroyed in minutes. She paused, letting her words settle. Instead, they fought for 47 minutes. They destroyed 186 enemy vessels. They saved 200,000 lives. And they changed everything we thought we knew about the species called humanity. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Delegates leaned toward each other, whispering in languages could not understand. I have studied the battle recordings extensively, continued. I have consulted experts from every relevant field, and I have reached a conclusion that I never expected. She turned to face the human delegation directly. Humans are not primitive. They are not weak. They are, in fact, the most formidable warriors this galaxy has ever seen. Admiral No straightened in his seat. This was not what he had expected to hear. Consider what we witnessed, said. Human pilots crashed their ships deliberately into enemy vessels. Human crew members refused to evacuate so they could continue firing weapons. Human soldiers fought until their last breath, without surrender, without retreat, without any consideration for their own survival. Her voice dropped lower. This is not normal behavior. This is not logical behavior. This is the behavior of a species that will do anything to protect what they care about. A delegate from one of the warrior cultures stood. What you describe sounds admirable. Why do you speak of it as a problem? Because it is a problem, replied. Consider the implications. If 12 human ships can destroy 186 enemy vessels, what could 100 human ships do? What could 1,000? What could a full human battle fleet do if it decided to go to war? Silence fell over the chamber. The answer is simple, said. They would win, against anyone, against everyone, because humans do not know how to stop. They do not know how to surrender. They will fight until victory or extinction and nothing in between. Ambassador stood. With respect, you make us sound like monsters. We are not aggressive. We do not seek conflict. We fought at Prime because innocent lives were in danger. I know, said gently. That is exactly what frightens me. You did not fight for territory. You did not fight for resources. You did not fight for power. You fought for strangers, for people you had never met, for people who had shown you nothing but dismissal and contempt since you joined this assembly. She shook her head slowly. A species that will die for strangers is a species without limits, and a species without limits cannot be controlled. The debate continued for hours. Delegate after delegate rose to speak. Some demanded that humans be expelled from the assembly entirely. Others called for restrictions on human technology. A few suggested that humanity should be isolated until they evolved into something less dangerous. Then a small delegate rose from the back rows. His name was 3, and he represented a species of peaceful traders who had lived among the stars for 10,000 years. May I speak? He asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. 3 species was respected if not powerful. Their words carried weight. 200 years ago, 3 said, the Dominion attacked They came without warning, without provocation, without mercy. They killed millions. They took hundreds of thousands as slaves. His voice trembled. No one came to help us. No one stood in their way. The great powers of the galaxy watched and did nothing. He turned to face the human delegation. 6 days ago, 12 human ships stood against those same. They had no obligation to fight. They could have retreated. They could have saved themselves. But they saw innocent beings in danger and they refused to abandon them. 3 bowed his head. For the first time in 200 years, someone fought for strangers. Someone cared enough to die for people they did not know. I do not fear such a species. I am grateful such a species exists. The chamber erupted in argument. Delegates shouted at each other. The speaker pulsed brightly, calling for order. Finally raised her hand. Silence returned. I understand the gratitude, she said. I share it, but gratitude does not change the reality. Humans are dangerous because they care too much, and caring too much leads to actions that cannot be predicted or controlled. She produced a document from her robes. I propose Resolution 7741. It does not punish humanity. It does not restrict their technology or expel them from the assembly. It is something much simpler. She read from the document. Resolution 7741. Humanity is hereby prohibited from participating in any armed conflict between member species of the Galactic Assembly. Human military vessels may not engage in combat operations outside of direct defense of human-controlled territories. Human soldiers may not serve in allied military forces. Humanity is hereby designated a protected and restricted species. Felt her heart sink. You want to ban us from war entirely? Yes, said, not as punishment, as prevention. If humans fight, they will not stop. If humans go to war, the entire galaxy will be drawn into their flames. We cannot allow that. She looked at with something like sympathy. I am trying to save both you and us, Ambassador. The vote was called. The result was quick and decisive. 71 in favor, 13 opposed. Resolution 7741 passed. Humanity was officially banned from war. Admiral No stood slowly. The chamber fell quiet, waiting to hear humanity's response. "You misunderstand us," he said. His voice was calm but cold. "We do not want to fight. We never wanted to fight. We fought at Prime because we had to, because no one else would." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates who refused to meet his. "You have just told us that we are too dangerous to protect the innocent. You have told us to stand aside while others suffer. You think this resolution will keep the galaxy safe." He shook his head slowly. "You are wrong. The galaxy will never be safe as long as predators like thee exist. And if you think a piece of paper will stop us from protecting the helpless when the time comes, you do not understand us at all." He walked out of the chamber. The other human delegates followed. Paused at the door, she looked back at the assembly one last time. "We will obey your resolution," she said quietly, "for now, but remember what you witnessed at Prime. Remember what humans are capable of, and pray that you never need our help again. Because the next time innocent lives are threatened, we may remember that you told us not to care." She left. The assembly sat in uncomfortable silence. They had just banned the most protective species in the galaxy from protecting anyone. And somewhere in the back of every mind was a small, nagging question. Had they made a terrible mistake? 30 years had passed since Resolution 7741. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. Director Park stood at the window of her office on Earth's orbital station. She was old now, her hair gray and her face lined with years, but her eyes were still sharp. Her spirit was still strong. The scars from Prime still marked her body, reminders of the day that changed everything. Behind her desk hung a simple frame containing a list of names, 3,353 names, the crew members who died under her command. She read that list every morning. She would never forget them. "Director," said a young voice from the doorway, "the fleet is ready to depart." Turn to face Officer Song. The young woman wore the white uniform of the Humanitarian Response Corps, the organization had built over the past 3 decades. On her shoulder was the Corps symbol, a human hand reaching down to help. "Very good," said. "What is the situation?" "Earthquake on 3. Estimated 4 million beings affected. Their government has requested our assistance." Nodded. "Tell Captain to proceed immediately. Priority medical supplies and rescue teams. I want a full assessment within 6 hours of arrival." Smiled slightly. "Captain anticipated your orders, Director. The fleet launched 20 minutes ago." Of course he did. After 30 years of working together, knew her mind better than she knew it herself. He had risen from lieutenant to captain of the Corps flagship, the vessel called Second Chance. He had dedicated his life to the same mission that drove her, helping those who could not help themselves. The Humanitarian Response Corps had grown from a small idea into the largest aid organization in galactic history. Thousands of ships carried food, medicine, and supplies to every corner of the galaxy. Human doctors treated patients on 100 worlds. Human engineers rebuilt cities destroyed by natural disasters. Human volunteers taught, healed, and helped wherever they were needed. And they carried no weapons. Resolution 7741 had banned humanity from war, so humanity had found another way to matter, another way to protect, another way to serve. "Director," said carefully, "there is something else. Intelligence reports indicate a convoy of refugees from the Outer Rim. They are being pursued by slavers." His expression hardened. Slavers. They were mostly gone, scattered and broken after their defeat at Prime, but other predators had taken their place. Other monsters who saw weakness as an opportunity. "What is the Corps doing about it?" "Captain has diverted 3 vessels to intercept, but Director hesitated. The slavers are heavily armed. Our ships cannot fight them." Our ships do not need to fight them. Walk to her communication console. Connect me to Captain. His face appeared on the screen. He was in his 60s now, his hair white but his spirit unbroken. The bridge of the second chance hummed with activity behind him. "Director," he said with a slight bow, "I assume you have heard about the refugee situation." "I have. What is your plan?" "We are moving to position ourselves between the convoy and the slavers. We have medical teams ready to receive any wounded refugees, and we are broadcasting on all frequencies, letting everyone know that humanitarian vessels are present." "The slavers will not care about broadcasts." "No," agreed. "They will not, but everyone else will. Every species in the galaxy is watching. Every news network is covering our response." He smiled slightly. "The slavers can attack us, but if they do, the entire galaxy will see them murder unarmed aid workers. Their reputation will be destroyed. Their operations will become impossible." Nodded. "And if they attack anyway?" "Then we die protecting innocents, just like we did at Prime." His voice was calm. "That is still what we do, Director. Resolution 7741 did not change who we are. It only changed how we show it." The refugee convoy emerged from hyperspace 3 hours later. 27 small ships, packed with thousands of beings fleeing violence in the outer sectors. Behind them came the slavers, 5 armed vessels with guns charging and threats broadcasting. The human ships were already there, 3 white vessels with the core symbol on their hulls. They had positioned themselves directly in the path of the slaver fleet. "Attention, humanitarian vessels," the slaver commander broadcast. "You are interfering with legitimate business operations. Move aside or be destroyed." Captain's response was immediate. "Attention, slaver vessels. You are threatening innocent refugees under the protection of the Humanitarian Response Corps. We will not move. We will not surrender. We will stand here until these people are safe." "You have no weapons. You cannot stop us." "We have something better than weapons," smiled. "We have cameras. Every moment of this encounter is being broadcast across the galaxy. Billions of beings are watching. If you fire on unarmed aid workers, everyone will see. Everyone will remember. Your names will become examples of cowardice and cruelty." The slavers hesitated. They remembered Prime. Everyone remembered Prime. They knew what humans were capable of. They knew that resolution or no resolution, humans would not back down. Humans would not run. Humans would stand in front of the innocent and dare the universe to move them. "You are bluffing," the slaver commander said, but his voice was uncertain. "Try me," replied. One of the slaver ships fired a warning shot. The beam grazed the hull of the second chance, leaving a small scar but causing no serious damage. Smile widened. "Thank you for that," he said. "Resolution 7741 prohibits humans from participating in galactic conflicts, but it specifically allows self-defense when directly attacked." He turned to his crew. "All vessels, defensive protocols authorized. Protect the convoy." From hidden compartments on the humanitarian ships, weapons systems emerged. Not powerful weapons, not warship-grade weapons, but enough to defend against slavers. The galaxy had spent 30 years watching humans carry food and medicine to the suffering. They had begun to think of humans as gentle, harmless. They had forgotten what humans truly were. The slavers remembered now. Within an hour, all 5 slaver vessels were captured. Their crews were arrested. The refugees were safe. On her, the ancient watched the news feeds with tired eyes. She was over 1,200 years old now, and she had seen so much. She had written Resolution 7741 with her own hands, hopping to protect the galaxy from human ferocity. Instead, she had created something else entirely. "They found a way," she murmured to herself. "They always find a way." The humans had not become warriors. They had become something more dangerous. They had become guardians. They had shown the galaxy that protection did not require violence, that courage did not require weapons, that the strongest force in the universe was the simple willingness to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. On her office wall, Director had added a new item beside the list of names. It was a drawing, made by a child on one of the refugee ships. The drawing showed a human figure standing in front of smaller figures, arms spread wide, blocking danger. Below the drawing, in the careful writing of a young hand, were 3 words: "Thank you, humans." Looked at the drawing and smiled. This was what they were always meant to be. Not warriors, not conquerors, not destroyers. Guardians. The galaxy had tried to take away humanity's ability to fight. Instead, they had given humanity something far more powerful: a purpose, a reason to exist, a role that no other species could fill. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, predators and tyrants learned a new truth. The humans could not go to war. The humans could not attack, but they would always be there, standing between the helpless and those who would harm them. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.